I hear people talk a lot about racial and gender differences among people. I seldom hear people talk about class differences. Is this because we fancy ourselves a classless society? Why, why this interest in class?
So I think Americans, some think we're classless. I think we also see it as such a big part of our identity that your class is within your control. That is a big part of the ideology. However, who has always had access to paid labor has always varied by race and gender in the US until pretty recent history that has started to shift. I mean, recent history, and we're only a 250-year-old country. So like in the last 50 years, right? And then we inherited a lot of our work culture from Europe at that time that goes farther back. So I think that is why we have a hard time discussing it. But it can be harder to see. So one of my first studies was I interviewed white men who had moved up from lower income backgrounds to higher ones on, do you disclose your background at work or do you hide it? And I also looked at, do you disclose it on purpose? Or are there other things you do that give it away? And so it's one of those nuances of, I found most of them did try to hide it, but there were other things that gave it away. And I looked at white men specifically because of the history we have in America. That if I looked at women or people of color, there's already an assumption about class there that may or may not be true. So I think it is less talked about because it's harder to identify at first, but there are subtle cues that give it away.